What's happening in the canine industry? For all the latest news, views, and expert opinions, stay right here for the Canine Paradigm. You'll hear from industry leaders, experts, doyens of the industry, learned colleagues, movers and shakers, and the odd randy guest. Get the latest insights and expert advice from both here and abroad from the people in the know. Now, here are your hosts, Glenn Cook and Pat Stewart. And I'm Lofty Fulton, and I'm out of here.
Glenda?
Yes.
We have to do a new ad.
We do.
It's a solemn time. Our long-time sponsor of the show, George Kittredge,
Yes.
very, very sadly passed away. And we formerly used to advertise for him his Rowdy Hound boxes.
We did.
So we don't actually know what's happened with Rowdy Hound boxes. You know anything about that?
I looked at the website. It said that they're recalibrating since their founder and boss has passed. But nonetheless, I think that you and I want to honour the memory of George Kittredge anyway. He was a friend to both of us, a hell of a good guy, and he supported us almost immediately. He was on board through and through, and I just don't want any of us to forget George. He was a terrific human being.
So we intend to continue to advertise Rowdy Hound, even though we don't know what's going on with them.
Yep.
In the hopes that they keep going, and that can be a bit of George's legacy that we're able to continue to promote.
I hope so.
In checking it out, we had a look to see, because we're not real good with the sponsorship. So we had a look to see who's actually paying for sponsorship. And we have a list of people to tell you that we support. And the first is our sugar mama, Barbara de Groot.
She's been with us from the start as well. Barbara's been an absolute staple in our...
She's a gem.
She is a gem.
She has a business.
She does. From the Heart Dog Training.
From the Heart Dog Training.
Yeah.
You can check it out. But she supports us as much and more than anybody ever has. So we appreciate you very much, Barbara. Another person who's supported us from the start.
The Einzelwiener.
Einzelwiener.
The Bullfed.
The Bullfed.
Yep.
It's where I get all my stuff.
Yeah.
It is, truly. It's where I get all my dog gear. If I need something, Jason's my first point of call. I don't use his shit website. He has a website. It's dog shit. I just message him directly. You guys probably should use his shit website, but I don't.
Yeah, because you don't want to message him directly and get his grumpy ire of the day.
Yeah, but do it. Get all your dog stuff from Jason. He's got everything you need. He's got all the shit that you need to train a dog for realty.
Everybody who comes to seminars and looks at mills and asks me mills questions, ask Jason.
Yeah.
Jason can point you in the right direction for getting the mill that's best suited for you.
I really like his leashes. I'm a big fan of his leash pack. That's why I sort of convinced him to do it. But anyway, get your stuff from Einzelwiener.
Yep.
Do you know who has a fantastic website and ships internationally?
My wife?
Your wife,
Yeah.
Canine Pharmaceuticals.
I couldn't imagine her not having a good website, how much of a perfectionist she is.
Well, the products are amazing. My dog merely being alive is a walking testimonial to that. My dog, who I've retired numerous times and has come out of retirement when I've managed to get his body back to healthy. And a big part of that is related to Canine Pharmaceuticals. So check it out, everybody.
I could say so many nice and biased things about Canine Pharmaceuticals and my wife, but what I will say is ignore me. Just look at testimonials. The testimonials speak for themselves. That's where the field trials are working. What makes Narelle's day, and mine as well, is when people are emailing in and sending messages of, well, primarily people have had no hope in the past because just everything that they were trying wasn't working, and now it is. And that is the testament that something is actually really working. And the other thing which I will add, one of the things that Narelle's told me in the past is dogs are incapable of understanding the placebo effect.
Oh, that's a good point.
So you can fake it on a human, but you can't fake it on a dog.
I never thought about that before. That's actually a really good point.
Well, my wife's actually a very smart person.
There you go.
So she's told me that humans are subject to the placebo effect where dogs are not. So it either works or it doesn't on dogs.
There you go. That makes total sense.
Yep.
There's one other person who puts a fair amount of work into this show.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah. Funny about that.
And I have a digital product that you can buy. If you go to my website, seriousdogbusiness.com, right now I've got 2 courses available to you. The Overview, which is a small course where you could learn how I teach.
Yep.
But the other one is the Wave Tops, which is a bigger course. It's everything I know about dog training. Well, it's not everything. It's a lot of what I know about dog training.
Yeah,
Check it
terrific.
out.
Yeah.
$500 dues. That's all it's going to cost you.
I recommend it when people are saying, what do I do? How do I get in the industry? I recommend them to your course.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah.
sir. All right, on with the show. Welcome back to the Canine Paradigm. I'm your host, Pat Stewart. I'm joined in studio today by my co-host, Glenn Cook.
Hello, everybody. Are you ready to kick the can a little further down the road?
Evidently, yes.
During the last episode when we started talking about
Crates.
we got some interesting feedback. One of the points I wanted to make was, although many people applauded our conversation and thought it was brave of us to lead a bit of a headway into discussing this topic, a few people came back and said, surely not that you would want dogs trapped in crates all day. Now, I feel that you and I did an adequate coverage of explaining that that's not what we want at all.
If that's what you heard, you are a disingenuous liar. You have chosen to hear that because that is not what we said.
Or maybe they didn't listen to the episode at all and only assumed that once they sort of read the dialogue that we put on side. However, I did a small clip where I superimposed my face onto the...
I saw that. You're like a teenager.
Yeah, exactly. So
you're up with the kids.
I am. I'm with
hip.
I'm with the grandkids.
Yep.
So I went on to that. I just basically said, this is what we're talking about. This is some of the hyperbole around it. I don't agree with it. It's disingenuous. It's infactual. And we're discussing this on the episode. So, yeah, people have come back and said, surely you wouldn't want dogs trapped in crates all day. No, we don't want dogs trapped in crates all day. What we do is we want people educated about the use of crates. There are people offending with literally everything that is across the planet. You can't name anything that a fuckwit hasn't got their hands on and completely decimated it. And then because of the very small population of fuckwits that do these type of things, as I said in the last episode, there are brilliant people, men and women around the world who have done terrific work with animals, animal welfare, animal liberation, animal rights, whatever you want to say. But just the ownership of animals. I mean, I know a multitude of people who own pets and they're wonderful people. They would walk in front of a bus before they saw something terrible done to their dog. The difficulty is you get this accordion effect of people in between and to the extremities of the accordion who basically want to decide what's righteous and what's not. We have teased it out before that no matter how positive you can be, in some groups you're just not positive enough. That's the problem we face with these type of conclusions is that people look at this sort of situation, then they start saying, I don't like the thought that a dog would be in the crate for 2 hours. So I've had people who are friends of my family who sent me a message and said, I think this is cruel. And I said, explain it to me. Like, what's your definition on what's cruel? Some of them have chose not to go into the conversation. Some of them have chosen to dig into it. And when I start explaining my way through it, they just want to shut it down because I go, oh, okay, well, obviously this is a losing point here. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then there's a very small minority who will look at it in a positive aspect where they can engage in some dialogue and say, to be honest, I didn't know all that. I wasn't aware of some of these points. Neither am I when I enter into discussion sometimes. There's sometimes where people explain things to me and say, are you aware that this happens en masse? Like as an inspector, I might go into a house and see dogs living in their own filth that have been trapped in a cage for 36 plus hours because the dog has been an inconvenience or they hate the dog or they're at work or they've left the weekend and the best place they put it was they put an overflowing bowl of kibble and water into a crate so the dog didn't make a mess inside the house. I'm succinctly aware that people do these atrocities. They do it to animals. They do it to each other. Some people do it to themselves. There's nothing that I can do about these type of people, and the authorities should be acting on that. You know, like when you and I have talked about matters in the past where there's been matters of assault in clubs or in situations like that, and people have come back and said, well, you should do something about it. And then we say, no, the authority should. You know, this is where the police should get involved, or this is where the RSPCA should get involved. That person is genuinely committing a crime, and that is where the authority should step in and say, that is a convictable crime, my friend. What you are doing there is beyond reasonable care of, you know, like that's not reasonable care. That is simply neglect of a living animal. And therefore, you are either in serious breach, you should be fined, you should have the animal either taken away from you or prevented you from owning animals ever again. I'm all for that sort of shit. But when you start talking about the complexities of time limits in crates, this is where we start to agree to disagree. And this is where the authorities step in and go, great, cool, let's just not have crates. Then we get punished collectively together because then they go, well, you guys can't decide, so therefore we need an adult in the room and I'm the adult and we'll just say we can't have crates. That's a good notch in the gun of taking pets away. that's where I wanted to lead into this next part of this conversation. So I want to bring this up. We've said this quite a few times, and this is where the internet is forever, right? We agree with that, right? These are quotes by Ingrid Newkirk,
so explain who she is.
She is the current president of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
Okay.
When we talk about this, people have also said to me, it sounds like you and Pat have a deep hatred for animal welfare agencies. I don't at all. I don't have a deep hatred for animal welfare agencies. I have a dislike for people telling me that just because the fuckwit that I mentioned before did something abominable, that I've got to pay for that because then I'm tarred with the same brush as them. Mm-hmm. That's where I draw the line. That's where I have complete disagreement with that. And the other fact is, I've asked you this question before. How many times have you been brought in to consult for these people?
0 times.
Right. It seems like people like you and me and many of our colleagues who fundamentally take a balanced approach to many things that we do, our advice isn't sought by these agencies. They go to an echo chamber of people who are going to agree with them because they don't really want us to disagree with them.
I will say, to clarify that, just because you said agencies, I have had government departments reach out to me that are under pressure from animal welfare groups.
Yeah, but they're the opposition. They're not the people who are launching the attack.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I've had people come to me and say,
I've had that as well.
This has happened.
It's like going to the shadow minister when the minister is after you.
This has happened. What's your opinion on this? Most recently, I know you know all about this, but I was approached by members of the New South Wales government to speak on bite sports, and just the idea of even training a dog to bite at all. Was very transparent, invited them to club, gave them as much information as possible, wrote a long document, gave them several hours of my time to explain the situation. The department then were like, oh, cool, you've alleviated all of our concerns. And I was like, okay, so we're good, nothing to worry about here. And they're like, oh, no, not at all. Like, absolutely not. Because we're the actual department. We write a report on this and it goes to the minister, who's the elected person that actually doesn't know anything about any of this. We give him that report. And I was like, yeah, but you told me the report will reflect favorably for me. They're like, we don't even know that he'll read that report. Like, he's not beholden to do what we say. We don't even know that he'll read it. We're going to say these things that you told us and we believe you and you've provided us the evidence for. But that doesn't at all mean that it will be heard by the correct people.
I've witnessed that firsthand many times where I know that it's 101 placation.
Yeah.
Where you're brought into a room, it's literally to appear that we sought counsel with the opposition, only to throw your material directly in the bin because the decision's already made. You can see it in their face.
Yeah.
Like, if you're reasonable at reading visual cues from people, and most dog trainers are, they actually understand how visual cues work. You can look people in the eye and you know where you're being fucked. You can see the contempt from them. You can see them grinning, or you can just see their eyes are glazed over. Like, you have the capability of seeing whether somebody is genuinely disinterested in what you've got to say. They almost can't hide it. The contempt some people have for you sometimes, it's basically just like, ugh, I've got to see this fucking Jono just to tick the box to say that I had this person come in. There was a great conversation I watched on the guy who built the Weather Channel.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was either Fox or CNN who were interviewing him, and they kept trying to talk on. He said, hey, be quiet, let me talk. You've asked me some questions about this. He said, I don't agree with this current narrative of climate change. I think it's very much a government-controlled narrative that they're pushing. And he said, the sciences that I'm involved in are saying the complete opposite of this. And the guy goes, yeah, but the scientists that the government are consulting with, he goes, yeah, because they're the ones that they give the funding to, the ones that they agree to. I don't know about this myself. I'm not saying that I have any skin in the game in this, because I'm not going to make this about climate change. I'm just saying that it just seems funny that when you've got somebody who agrees with your narrative, they're the people whose position you will take on this. And then they will say, I've got a scientist, multiples of them that are agreeing with me. But this guy on the other hand, who is a scientist, is saying, yeah, but if you want your funding cut, that's the way to go about it, is to disagree with the government, because they'll say, well, we're not funding you. We're funding people who we believe are in the best interest of what we're doing. I'm not suggesting that all governments are corrupt, but if the fucking shoe fits, wear it. Or as they say, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, good chance it's a fucking duck. You get sick of these things and you get disenfranchised, as you can tell that I am, and you get jaded towards these type of things because the political rejection, it's a form of discrimination. But nobody seems to care because then they label it as you're a crackpot or you're being cruel. So what they do is they throw a label at you, which everyone goes, well, I don't want to be a crackpot and I don't want to be cruel. I best get away from this. And that's what people have come to me and said. It was brave of you and Pat to talk about this because other people feel like they'll get cancelled or they'll get in trouble if they start having these conversations. Trust me, it's not like I enjoy getting on here and talking about this shit because I actually find it somewhat distasteful to do so.
And it's so fucking monotonous having to do this all the time. I hate every time that this comes up and we go, all right, well, we're going to have to address that on the show. I'm always like, oh, for fuck's sake.
It's not fun.
Can we not be those guys for a little while? Can we have a turn of just talking about something cool and fun and teaching people about dog training?
Yeah, this is a form of agitation.
Yeah, but without constantly this coming into the zeitgeist, it can be easy to sort of not notice it until it's too late. Since we notice it. And I think as well, because, we get sent all this stuff, right? Like I'm not online very much and I'm certainly not trawling PETA's page looking what they got to say when I am online. The reason we know about all this stuff is because people are sending it to us constantly and asking us to address it.
It's amazing how many little snitches came into our group to try and get PETA to comment on it too, like who were flagging it to PETA, what people were saying in our group.
Yeah. Yeah.
I let some of them stay, but just the people who were deliberately trying to light fires, I just thought, no, fuck you. You don't belong in our cool group of people. But then people would say, well, then you're censoring. You're doing to them what you're accusing them of doing to you. And I thought about that for a period. I thought, yeah, well, there is an argument for that, isn't there?
Yeah, there's two sides to that coin.
Yeah. So unfortunately, if you're going to have open discourse, you've got to let the enemy come to the table as well. So when I said the internet is forever, I'm going to say alleged because I don't know absolutely for sure, but all the correspondence that I've researched and looked up to points that Ingrid Newkirk, current president of the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, said, in the end, I think it would be lovely if we stopped this whole notion of pets altogether. Eventually, companion animals would be phased out and we would return to a more symbolic relationship, enjoyment at a distance. If people want toys, they should buy inanimate objects. If they want companions, they should seek it of their own kind. So she has primarily said this is something that is part of our mandate or my mandate. Something that I want to push is that I don't want people having companion animals. I've spoken about that to a few people and somebody slapped it back in my face where they said, have you seen this interview where Ingrid Newkirk's saying, no, she wants people to still enjoy dogs? I said, show me the interview. In the interview, she's saying, I don't want you to go to breeders. I want you to get dogs from shelters. Well, guess what they do to dogs in shelters?
Sex them.
They de-sex them. So where do you think this is going? Just look a little bit down the track. Don't look at right now. Look to the future. The future is eliminate breeders. Then we don't have puppies anymore. Then we don't have dogs. Get them from shelters, which any reasonable person on the planet, again, unless you're an unfeeling bastard, would say, yeah, support shelters. And we do. We've supported them on the show. So to backpedal on my own discourse here, I support shelters. I support people who are doing God's work and seeing all those horrific cases come up. But then again, there's dogs in shelters who shouldn't go to homes. And PETA acknowledged that they have those dogs and they kill them by the thousands. Ingrid Newkirk has been said on interviews where she says, we take these dogs in because they're unwanted and we kill them by the thousands. Her words, like she is saying that to journalists.
What do you think that is? If you had to guess, like that's a pretty high level of nihilism. What's motivating that, do you think? If that is the secret agenda of PETA, and I believe that it is, they want no pets. There's that quote.
Let me read another quote while we're talking about this, because this is allegedly from Ingrid as well. So we should analyze this as well. Pet ownership is slavery. Animals are not ours to eat, wear, experiment on, or be entertained by. So it's got a meme picture of her smiling in the corner.
Has to be true.
So it has to be true.
Yeah.
One of the interviews that I looked up online, there's her whipping up the crowd basically saying, like activism is forever and we're not going away. We do need people to speak out for pets because I have firsthand seen the atrocities that people have done to pets before. And then there's people who just don't care about them. Like they don't have a loving relationship with animals or even our own kind. They don't care. That's evident when you see these atrocities of children being traded across borders and used in sex trafficking and stuff like that. That's fucking abominable. All of that sort of stuff is beyond imaginable that you could take an innocent little kid and do those sort of things. And it is to animals as well for entertainment. So I guess I think to wear the shoes of my opponents in this one, if you kind of were exposed to that sort of atrocity and you saw firsthand, like you're behind the curtain and it all is revealed to you, I think that's where something snaps inside where you just say, people just don't deserve pets. I understand where people want to do better, but not where everybody is punished. There is no line anymore. I don't even know if it's a hatred for humans. I'm only guessing here. I'm not saying this is an absolute, but I just don't know whether it's a dislike and such a deep-seated distrust and dislike for your own species where you just go, you're not capable of doing the right thing by pets. So we really need to remove them altogether and basically let them return to nature. Because there are people in interviews going, there's people online saying that you just want to open the cages and let pets run free. And they always, as people in political positions do, they never really answer the question. They just go in an about way where really they're revealing the question where they go, well, here's the alternative, but the alternative leads to extinction, extinction of this process. Take a de-sex puppy or an adult dog from a shelter and therefore we don't have the problem anymore because A, you're cleaning up the shelters, so you're taking all that wastage out of shelters, which I think is a nice thing. But I also think it's a little bit of a painting a false narrative, or it's creating this nirvana where all dogs are suitable to go in homes, and we've certainly seen that they're not. There are some dogs that just aren't capable of adjusting in some homes. I don't even know what the right home is for some of these dogs sometimes because it's not just a favorable relationship. There are some deep-seated mental health issues where some of these dogs have gone too far.
So let me try and play devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure.
Do you think it's possible that PETA and the idea of abolishing pet ownership is one of those kind of shoot for the stars, settle for the moon sort of situations? Do you think that it's possible that they're going that hard in the paint? They're like really pushing and things that you and I would point out as ridiculous, as we did in the last episode, in order to find a middle ground? Do you think that's possible, that they're intentionally saying things that are so far gone that it's ridiculous in order that we would oppose it and therefore like we can then reach a compromise and hit like a middle ground? Do you think that it's possible that's the case? I want to think that's the case. And certainly I've been guilty of that. Like I've done that in the past. I've intentionally asked for more than I wanted so that I would get what I wanted. Right? So that we could negotiate back to the point where I'm actually happy. And I think it's entirely possible that that could be the case. But I think that sometimes you do get what you want and it's kind of possible to cause a lot of damage along the way. Like specifically in terms of training, right? One of the things that I used to talk about all the time was paying dogs out of position. So I used to talk all the time, constantly hammering people about like terminal markers, pay the dog out of position and talk about, you got to do that, you got to do that, you got to do that. And then people that train with me were like, hey, you don't do that all the time. I'm like, yeah, because you shouldn't do it all the fucking time. That's crazy. But I was trying to move the needle on people who would never do that, right? And if I could say you should do it, you got to do it, you got to do it, it's the best way, blah, 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 then they go, oh, well, I'll do a little bit of it. Definitely not going to do only that. I'll do a little bit. And then I'm like, I got what I wanted. Because if I'd just been more moderate, you would have dismissed me. But by being more full on, by carrying on about it more and being further deeper into my own stance than I actually am, then you can move the needle a little bit. But I think, certainly when I was doing that, it came to bite me in the ass. Well, it was bad advice to some people because I think that's one of the issues when you're trying to influence people that you're not in direct contact with. You have this avatar in your mind of what they are and you're trying to serve information to that avatar that doesn't actually exist. And you then it falls into the ears that it falls into. So maybe PETA's thought process around this stuff is we'll say these outrageous things about how there should be no breeders and your dog should only come from shelters and be desexed before you get them. And there should be nothing that even approximates balanced training. Like it should be 100% force-free. Don't even say no to your dog. Let it drag you towards a dog having a seizure, that kind of fucking stupidity. No dog should be in crates at all because they're imagining that they're passing that information on to like the dog daddy, right? Like they're passing that information onto this extreme version that they've concocted that does exist, like there's an observable person that is that.
Mm.
And then they're just trying to have that person soften their approach so that the rest of us kind of land in the middle. How likely do you think it is that they sat around the boardroom table and discussed that? Do you think there's any intentionality behind that? Because that is the case. Like that is what's happening, right? Like that's kind of how the world functions, is that dummies say dumb things and then other people go, oh, that's not true, right? But the dumb thing was already said and is now real. It's tangible, got put into the zeitgeist. It's in people's heads and they're approximating that to reality. They can observe it. They can find an example of it, and then we can give an opposing view, and then perhaps they land more central than they would have with a more moderate view.
You raised so many good points there. And as you were talking about all of your points, which there's certainly things that I agree with that you brought up, it brings things to light that you may not have considered or thought of along the way. But what it did was invoked and made me remember of a Netflix series I just watched on the Jerry Springer Show.
It's good because we haven't been paid by Netflix in ages, so we definitely need to bring that up again.
We just got $1 in the tin right there. Wouldn't that be lovely?
If they paid us to mention them. If anyone paid us to mention them, that'd be great.
Exactly. It's only recent. It's a documentary on the Jerry Springer Show.
Oh, yeah.
The ingenious side of the producer of the show, he wanted to make sure that when people were mindlessly flicking through the channels, because America was, I think, one of the first in the world where they had cable channels where they just had
hundreds of
options of show, and people would just like flick through at night and they'd just see the same sort of narrative. So they'd keep on flicking. But what he wanted people to do was see something disruptive, like people fighting on air, and have them pause at that and go, wonder what that's all about, and then stop the channel there and turn up the volume and actually listen to what the show is. And subsequently it worked. They were trying to get up to the category of being as popular as Oprah, because she was queen of the TV back then, and they surpassed her at one point. The whole mechanism.
I bet Oprah didn't like that.
No, none of them did.
I bet.
No.
The Hollywood elites were unhappy with that.
Yeah. I wonder if they said thanks to Beyonce. The orchestration behind that disruptive nature, when you see people throwing red paint on people and saying that's the blood of animals because you're wearing fur or you're killing or blah, 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 it's meant to disrupt. It's meant to make people stop and pay attention and get news reporting on them. Because those sort of things work. Even though people are saying, well, I fucking hate this organization, look how extreme they are, it still stops the nation and makes people look. Like the term in business at the moment, you certainly sense a lot of what's been happening in America has been happening. You hear people talking about people in business as, do you think this person is a disruptor? Is that what they're doing? Is they're trying to disrupt the narrative? In a lot of cases, they are, like you look at extreme people like Andrew Tate with his narrative and stuff like that. He says the most outrageous things, but people listen to him, because he's not just monotone and in the background. He's resonating with people because he's speaking out against the status quo. He's speaking out against what he considers the woke community and so forth. He's speaking out against people who aren't like him.
Yeah.
And then, people who have felt like, I've been sitting on my hands for a long time. I've been suppressed. I've been told to think all these things which I don't agree with. And somebody is saying the things that I do agree with. Now I'm going to listen to what they're saying. These sort of disruptive people, they use quite extreme notions to get you to pay attention to them. You know that. Many of us do because we can see it.
Disrupt is a funny word, right? So, disrupt is a military task verb. So within a mission, so when a set of orders has been given, when you're sort of explaining it all, I actually did a thing in Patreon on this a long time ago. It was the thing where I taught my dog to run around that circle garden area, which someone later pointed out was like clearly a witch's like ceremonial garden. And when I went back there and had a look at it, I was like, oh yeah, I can see some crazy devil worshipping shit happening here. Like that has the vibe, yeah. But I explained the sort of military planning process before I went through that and explained SMEAC.
Now you said SMEAC, you've got to tell people what it means.
It's an acronym for a planning cycle: situation, mission, execution, admin, logistics, and command and control, right? And so the mission section is always said twice, but a mission within a military context, it has to fit a very strict formula and it has to have what's called a task verb, and disrupt is one of the main ones. And so the mission might be to do this in order to kill, in order to capture, in order to seize, in order to hold, in order to disrupt, right? And disrupt is one of the main task verbs actually allocated to smaller guerrilla forces because that's what you can do most effectively, right? Like that's the thing that as a small force against a bigger force, you can disrupt very well. You can't necessarily completely destabilize. You can't overthrow, that kind of stuff. That's hard. That's very difficult. But disrupt basically gets translated to go and cause a bunch of fuckery.
Like the militia did in early colonization in America.
Yeah, well, I know of this because this was a lot of, like, in the early days in Afghanistan for my unit, that was our main task verb was disrupt. Before we knew what was up, it was just go and cause trouble. Go and fucking be places where people don't want you. Go and talk to people that people don't want you to talk to. Just cause a problem. Then the intelligence people will figure out who's affected by that problem. And then we can exploit that and then new missions can overcome. And that's what I see. And counterinsurgency was very new in the early 2000s. The counterinsurgency as a type of war, they had to invent a thing called a coin school, the counterinsurgency school, because it's not taught as normal military discipline because normally it's, like good guys versus bad guys or side A versus side B. Everyone wears a uniform and we know because you're speaking another language, you're the bad guy, right? Like, or you're from that place, you're the bad guy. It doesn't work like that now. And it's all counterinsurgency. And so insurgency is like, well, I don't know who the bad guy is. It's not clear to me. And he has to, in order to be a bad guy and be dealt with as such, there's a series of boxes that have to be ticked, but you could stop ticking one of those boxes at any minute and now you're not that. So as an example, like I know I'm talking about a lot of military stuff, but it relates, right, to understand, is that you could be cruising in on a known village full of bad guys who yesterday did a bunch of terrible shit. And you got reporting on that and you're going in there to stop it. And you can be watching them from a distance with their guns. And when they hear the helos coming in, they put those down. You can't do anything anymore. They're just civilians, they're local populace. And you have no evidence that they've done anything. And they're not prepared to fight you in that moment. So they're not a combatant in that moment. They're a local civilian, right? So that counterinsurgency and that disrupt operation being done by the disruptors, not always necessarily by what we think were the good guys, it's well thought out and super effective. And what it means is that a very small force can do a disproportionate amount of damage. That's sort of the crux of it. And by disrupting, exactly as you say, like Andrew Tate's a great example, right? He is for sure an agent of disruption. Now, you could go down conspiracy theories and think someone maybe created him. We could have that conversation versus he created himself because he wants the money and the fame and the accolades, whatever, right? It doesn't matter either way. He, through nothing but commentary, can cause division, can cause chaos, and can inflame and fuel certain people. We don't even need to talk about his opinions on anything. It's irrelevant, right? It's that he can do that via just speaking. And we have that for sure in the dog space. We have professional disruptors. And it's not always bad. It can be good, right? You would have been thought of that when you were leaning towards more modern methods and people who were unwilling to look at those methods didn't want to. At that time, you would have been the disruptor and you would have displaced. It's another military term.
Yep.
And therefore, when someone is displaced, they can no longer carry on in the means and manner in which they have, and they have to realign. So disruption can cause displacement and then a realignment. I agree with you entirely, but I've derailed our conversation a little bit.
Pariah come to mind as well, because in certain aspects, when you change lanes, you become a pariah to a certain group of people as well.
Yeah, but imagine you're very happy to be that, then it's not really a problem. You know what I mean? Like, and if you were never one of those people, it doesn't matter. For example, there's plenty of people, I won't say their names, but we've often referred to them here, like the hat, for example, right, or the ponytail. They're not dog trainers. They're people who are they're disruptors, right? So like they're in the space, they're making money, but if their actions led to, like a radical change that were bad, like say the wrong person or the right person sees a video of a dog getting lit up and shut down in order to stop aggression, and then look, see, there's nothing wrong with the e-collar, and that's like their justification. That's the kind of thing that the wrong person sees that video that can have a significant effect on the industry, but the person who's doing that individual can just walk away from the industry, like gone, and not be worried about that. We just move on to the next thing. Because I was here for that period to do this, I caused a stir, but it doesn't matter. I'm out now, right? Like I've caused the damage that I have and off I go. Whereas like you and I, we would think of ourselves as pariahs if we were treated that way because we're not going anywhere. We're sticking around. And if we were the cause of a big problem or a major shift, good or bad, right? If we were the cause of a major shift, good or bad, which, we don't really have the capacity to be, but we would stick it out because then you're like, oh, fuck, well, this is my industry. I truly care about this. I'm not going anywhere. Now I have to deal with the fallout of this. Whereas others who are in our space just bounce. They're just like, oh, I'll see you later. And we see that all the time. Like how often you see people come and go fast from the dog space.
Oh, mate, some of the people that I've seen in it who they made accolades that they were going to be in it forever. They lasted 2 years and they were gone.
Yeah.
They've never been seen or heard from again. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people who've made the loudest squawkings and the biggest deals. Within a 10-year period, nobody knows who they are anymore. They're gone.
And there can be multiple reasons for that. But one of them that certainly I've observed is that things catch up with you eventually and you reach sort of a critical mass. So imagine you come into the dog space and you make a big noise because you're young and good looking and you know how to use social media, right? And you can talk. And then you take on a bunch of clients because you're espousing particular things. You got to make money and you do a terrible job by those clients. And say you're seeing, like average dog trainer doing in-home behavior mod, maybe takes on 3 or 4 clients a week. We're going to go and see 3 or 4 people. And then they, of the 3 to 4, 1 or 2 become ongoing lessons. Eventually, you end up with a big dossier of people you've overpromised and underdelivered. And then they come to you and are like, hey, motherfucker, my dog's not fixed. I've paid you a ton of money. And 1 or 2 of them coming to you, we've had that. Like I've had that for sure. I've had people come to me unhappy 6 months later or whatever.
You can't please all the people all the time. That's just the reality.
That's going to happen. No matter your method, no matter how good you are, I don't care. The best dog trainers on the planet have unhappy customers.
Yep.
That's the way it goes.
Yep.
Especially when you do high level dog training, because a lot of the times, people don't maintain the training. So if you train a dog to a really high standard.
It's not that, mate. I mean, your goal in life, if you're a service entity, is to try and do the right thing or the best thing by your customer.
Yeah.
Let's just call them a customer. But there's just generally people out there who are just unhappy people.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to encounter them all the time.
And it doesn't matter what you do for them. Everything in life for them is a burden.
Yeah.
Also, the unfortunate part about it is they're the most outspoken people as well.
Yeah. But you get 1 or 2 of those every year or 6 months. No biggie.
You just got to look at the means average of it. That's what the reality of it. Even when I'm talking about Narelle's products and stuff like that, and people are talking to me, I said, don't listen to me spruik about it, because I'll tell you it's fucking gold dust and pixie powder, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. I said, what you want to do is look at the people who have written genuine and not bot-created reviews. It's the clients who tell you what your product and service is about.
That's right. We see a lot of people who are like, I'm a disruptor. I'm here to shake up the industry and show these old people what's what. They don't know what I know. I'm fucking blah, blah, blah. And then I underserve someone once a year or thereabouts. I get an angry phone call from someone. Hey, fuck you. We're not happy with how this went. Okay, we've got to figure this out. Maybe there was a misunderstanding of what was going to be delivered.
Yeah,
let's work through this together. And we figure it out. No big deal. That's business. Everybody has that.
Of course.
But if you're getting 2 or 3 of them a week, right? Because
that's a problem.
Yeah, because that catches up to you eventually, right? Because you hit this critical mass of people you're over promising and under delivering, and then you get a couple of complaints and then a couple more, and then that builds to the point where every phone call is now a complaint about your prior service. If you've only been in the dog industry 2 years, at that point, the easiest thing to do is change your phone number and fuck off.
Which people do.
That's what happens. That's what we see. That's what we see all the time.
Yeah.
And we see people come into the space. There's one recently, there's a lady kept coming up in my feed, and it was old man, I forget, I can't remember his first name, but from Shield Canine, the Canadian guy, great dog trainer, fucking awesome, competes at world level in IGP. I think I'm 8th or something like that.
Yep.
Some lady in her van talking about how he's a piece of shit and his dog's not actually trained because he uses an e-collar, and she explains the way that fear.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So,
and he's challenged her.
Yeah, but lady, you haven't got a fucking clue. You might have trained a couple of dogs to sit in your life, right? But you are looking at a recognized world level trainer and just shitting on them. Like the people like that, they don't last, because if that's your attitude, like if you truly think I know better than all these other people,
but they
and
get
I'm
what they
tell
want
them,
out of it because they get that person to carry their name around
Yep.
for them. Made you look.
for sure.
Yeah.
But that pattern of behavior builds a lot of unhappy people that follow you around, right? And eventually that trail of people that are following you around that you've overpromised and underdelivered to, or that you've
But some of those
sold-
people, mate, are so narcissistic, they don't care about
Yeah,
it.
for sure. They exist. But for the most part, people like that are in and out of our space in a few years,
Yeah.
right? Because they've run their mouth too much. They've insulted too many people who are better than them.
Yeah.
And usually the reason they end up going is there's that critical mass of people complaining about them, which we don't see because it's not necessarily like it's their actual customers. The people's like what we're doing right now is only she'd love that. If I knew her fucking name, I'd say it so you can go and see how stupid the thing she says. But I don't even know, right?
It's
She's
crazy.
just someone in a car. But that serves her. She likes that we're talking about her. But she'll have enough customers who'll be like, hey, man, I'm not getting any results here, right? And that's what gets rid of those people is the lack of actual tangible results from the customers, from the people that are paying them. Because at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to, right?
That's true to a degree, but some of these people are so fucking slick too. They only take on the cases they can't fail.
Of course.
You know,
Of
like
course.
they lowball
Yep.
as much as they possibly can because they do not want to be seen to fail.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the other way that people go out of the industry, and it's usually the same sorts of people, but they get bitten bad. And,
yeah.
Like that's part of it as well, is when you kind of run your mouth or you're showing like, hey, look at all the cool things I can do, and you bite off more than you can chew, or you misinterpret something and you get bitten. It's something of a rite of passage. Like you've been bitten badly, I've been bitten badly, everybody gets bitten badly at some point. But if you're not in it, like if you don't love it, you're not sticking around after you get bitten. If you're just here to disrupt and shake up the industry, nothing like a set of teeth in your arm to fucking change your mind about that being your career path.
There was a great thread. I wish I screenshotted it. It was talking about something along those lines. What were they calling them? OnlyFans dog trainers. So they're basically saying these are people that dress up for OnlyFans who are training dogs. And they said they're not in it for the dog training. They're in it for something else. But one of them got fucking towed up really badly.
Really?
And same sort of thing. I really wish I kept that thread. It was a really interesting thread. I was listening to it and I thought, do I want to talk about this or not? Because then you're brought into the whole sexism muppetry and you think, do I want to go down that track?
You know, it's funny when you said the OnlyFans dog trainer, my mind did not allocate a sex to that. Not at all. Because there's plenty of dudes I see. There's one guy I was following for a little while. I can't remember his name.
You told me about him with his shirt off.
Shirt off every, and I was like, wow, good for you. If I had a body like that, I'd fucking train shirtless.
Well, no,
I'd never wear a shirt.
No, I wouldn't because I don't know. I'm a bit of an old stickler with things like this, and maybe I'm just a dinosaur with those sort of things. But I kind of look at the dog training industry as a sanctuary, and it should be protected as such. Like I'm not a prude. I'm not going to even try and make myself sound like I'm some fucking dignitary or prude or something like that. But I think there's a time and a place for it. You know, like sometimes I do watch clips where I just think you're wearing the least amount of clothes while you're training a dog, and what for? Like really what for? You know, and then people say, you've got no place in talking about that. How dare you judge them and stuff? And I don't publicly. I don't comment in the comments. I don't say anything to them. I'm just alone with my thoughts, but I do unfollow them. When I start seeing shit like that, I just go out. If I want to see that sort of stuff, I'll go looking for it deliberately.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what people
for me, it's tacky. It's just tacky and untasteful.
I think that if
we've gone very far from our subject.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, bring it back around.
Yeah. I think we want to dig into the 5 freedoms because that sort of came up in conversation and it has over time where people have questioned where is my integrity or where is the integrity of our tribe of people, where do we sit with the 5 freedoms? So that has bounced around in conversations, and I think someone started talking about it in an episode a while ago. What's that psychologist lady? What's her name? She's from Queensland. Samantha?
Sam King.
I think Sam may have mentioned something to do with the 5 freedoms in her conversation. I'm not sure because I haven't listened back on that conversation.
Well, should we list them?
Yeah, we should list them. It's a UK-derived.
So I think on the 5 freedoms, and this is what I was talking about in terms of moving the needle, because The 5 freedoms, what did we say? It was made the original comes from the Bramble Committee in 1965.
Yep.
And in 1965, some of this would have been fucking outrageous ideas, right?
Absolutely.
To be saying this. And so that's what I mean by shoot for the stars, but be happy to have landed on the moon. That might have been a lot of the cases was certainly with this kind of thing. Because you can imagine, saying this kind of stuff in 1965.
Which is disruptive.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. It's not necessarily a full stop bad thing, but there has to be
Something had to be done.
Yeah, and we have to find balance, right? There has to be people on one end saying stupid things. There has to be people on the other end saying stupid things. And then there has to be people in a conglomeratory, is that a word? A middle, right? A chunk of people in the middle going like, hey, I see your good points and I see your good points. However, I am going to land here. And then there's another person who says, yeah, but I see those points just a little bit differently. So I'm still middle, I'm still centrist, but I'm just a little bit to the one direction compared to where you are. And then somebody else who's just a little bit in the other direction. We can all be like, no, we're all, we're on track. We're doing the same thing. I wouldn't do what you do, but I'm not opposed to what you do. That kind of thing. So I think that might have been the case with these 5 freedoms, but there's some concerning ones now to us at this point. So number 1 of the 5 freedoms, first one, freedom from hunger and thirst.
Well, how could you oppose that?
Yeah, unless you have a dog that you are intentionally not giving a full, let's get to the craziness. We have both, as trainers, told people don't feed the dog before the session.
But we haven't said don't feed the dog.
Yeah.
If I believe the narrative that we've carried through this is you're still giving your dog its daily nutritional requirements, then we've met the challenges of what item 1 says. There are people that I know of on the other side who say to people, you might need to not feed your dog for a couple of days. They need their narrative carried over of you cannot use tools, but you must maintain arousal from your dog so it competes with everything in the environment. So therefore, if the dog is not doing it on day 1, I guarantee you on day 2 or 3, you'll see a change in pattern. I've had conversations. You had conversations. Collectively, you and me have talked about this where we've said that's a form of extremism. We're talking about the other people that are still being complained about, even on the other side, where they're saying, no, they're not our people. They're the extremists. And I am at my wit's end of extremists in every fucking facet. It doesn't matter whether it's political, whether it's animal derived, whether it's fucking religion, whatever it is. An extremist in my mind is a dangerous person.
Yeah, for sure.
They're literally closed off to any discourse in a positive manner. They're very, very focused on their way and only their way. And as I said, they can become easily outraged and weaponized in no time at all.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it's reasonable to oppose extremism in all its forms.
Absolutely.
So our second of the 5 freedoms is freedom from discomfort. Of course, I don't want a dog left in a shitty situation where it's constantly in pain. I don't want a dog being intentionally put into discomfort. However, that is what negative reinforcement is.
And it can't be avoided.
Yeah.
It just cannot be avoided.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So at some point, the dog is going to experience some level of discomfort. Now, doing that on purpose and with no goal, it's one thing to say, this dog, I am going to intentionally cause discomfort to this dog because I want to. And it's an entirely another thing to say, I'm going to cause discomfort from this dog in order that it prompts action from the dog, and then I can remove that discomfort and the dog has a learning moment. And maybe the thing the dog needs to learn needs to be learned fast, or it needs to be learned with a level of dependency or a level of reliability, and negative reinforcement is going to bring that. The other thing as well is to consider that the avoidance of discomfort altogether is, first of all, probably impossible to do. But then also, I think truly that if you eradicated discomfort altogether, you're also going to get rid of comfort, because things work in balance. There has to be an opposing force, right, to keep anything. And how do you know what comfort is if you don't know what discomfort is as well?
I'm going to refer to our good friend and industry colleague, Dr. Melanie Uda, again, who talked about and has talked about on various different times in her own channels how the brain is hardwired for both. The brain needs both discomfort and comfort.
Yeah.
Only recently I was looking for some clips on dog stuff just to put on my own channel. There was one of a guy putting a harness on a pug. Mm-hmm. For all intents and purposes, everybody's out there going, you shouldn't use tools, you should have dogs in harnesses, who are violently opposed against the use of tools. But as you have said before, some of these people just aren't positive enough for their positive friends.
Yeah.
Because the pug was objecting to having the harness put on, people were literally freaking out about it online, lighting the guy up. Even though there were some pug people in there going, hey, you don't know what pugs are like. They are the worst. Pugs and Frenchies can be so bloody minded when you're trying to fit them up with equipment sometimes. It might be fair to say that the guy was rushing it a bit so he could get some content for social media. I would have advised him, slow down, or just don't put this shit online where you can be thought of as a fucking supervillain because your little pug was having a tantrum over it. Some people in there going, hey, great work, you got the harness on after all those tantrums and problem solved, which was the narrative that he was building, is my dog is going to object to this, but in time you'll see that she'll recover and we will proceed with the lesson as expected. But mate, a lot more fucking hate than support in the comments. So the thing is, you can't avoid discomfort. And the smart thing is just don't put it on fucking social media. Like if you're going to do these things where there's going to be a little bit of confrontation or discomfort between you and the dog, even me saying that is making it sound like I'm trying to reduce the importance of the dog's discomfort and trying to hide it away from public eyes. But the people who are judging you out there, who are they to judge you? These aren't animal people. Some of them just don't get it. They just listen to a dog and think, oh, you're in distress. Like, as I said in last week's episode, the narrative about the baby, the comments alone, this is why people like Joe Rogan who don't read the comments, they're fucking smart people. They put out content and they just refuse to read the comments, because if you read the comments, you just think, how many insane people are there really out there?
Oh, but there's heaps. That's the issue.
That's the issue, right?
Yeah.
The comments alone, when you actually filter through them, and I know you get caught up on comments sometimes, but when you actually filter through them and you look at it and you think, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
How does your mind work that you've come to this conclusion?
Yeah. Well, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
'Cause I have big feelings about that.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so number 3 is freedom from pain, injury, and disease.
Yep.
I feel like that talks of proper veterinary care. I think that talks about...
Well, this is mostly, this derived from agriculture.
Yeah, that's right. This is for stock animals, right? And so the freedom from pain, injury, and disease, I think that is a great one, in that we're going to, like, for sure, I'm on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dogs should be at the vet regularly. They should get their annual checkup or whatever it is.
I don't like seeing my dogs distressed.
No, totally.
Ladybugs, she's a continual vet model, but there's also people who have got online to me and said, hey, mate, you should put her down.
Yeah.
And I've said, I can manage this, and she's happy. And when that changes, we'll do something about it.
Yeah.
They think they're doing me a favor by saying this, but if they were before me, I'd slap their head into a 180-degree turn.
I think that in terms of that sort of stuff, I think that you know your dog.
Yeah, of course.
And I think we...
And we have conversations with the vet about it as well. And as we've all agreed, Randy's coming of age now. Like, you can start to see visible deterioration in him. Mate, it breaks my heart every time. I fucking sob like that little baby in the clip every time I have to even think about making those decisions. But I will do it for my dogs when they do it. Panos, I think he was talking about it in one of his episodes. I think he used the phrase, better a month early than a day late.
Yeah.
And after the terrible experience that I had with Dutch and what I put him through, I will never do that to a dog again. It was so fucking undignified and so disgraceful. He definitely went a day late. And mate, if I'm before judgment of my creator and he asks me the thing that torments me most, it's that.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, I still struggle with it. It's the one thing that I really struggle with most in my life, is that I left that dog go a day late. That's the most tormenting thing to me. So if people ever challenge me over my thoughts and feelings over dogs and stuff like that, like, get fucked.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah.
All right, 4th one, freedom to express normal behavior. This one cracks me up, right? Because, like, normal behavior to my Malinois is biting the fuck out of people. So
Freedom to express normal behavior for some dogs is to kill other dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There has to be limitations on that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's freedom to express yourself within controlled circumstances. And
again, this is written largely for agriculture, and it's bled into the pet space.
yeah, I think that we could read that as freedom to be biologically fulfilled. And I'm with you 100%. Stop banning my fucking sports. Stop making it hard for me to biologically fulfill my dog.
Exactly.
Right?
Somebody might do a voiceover of you doing that again.
And then the last one is freedom from fear and distress. Now, I think that's a funny one, right? Because a lot of the times as balanced trainers, we get accused of training with fear. The latest carrying on about old mate's e-collar was carrying on about the dog's too afraid to do anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it doesn't really work like that. Like, for sure, you could do that. It's not going to be, you're not going to get any sort of expressive behaviors. You get a shitty shut down dog. Like, you obviously, that's what I think is interesting when people say stuff like that. You're like, hey, you don't understand even the slightest bit about how to read animal behavior. So that's what I find myself when you have these conversations with people and they're like, oh, it's terrible. You're shutting down the dog. And you go, but here's the dog. It's not shut down. And like, yes, it is. And you go, okay, well, the conversation has to end now because you're not a reasonable person. That's not observable, right? Like, I'm judged against that in my sport. That's absolutely something that you're a PSA judge. If I walk out and my dog stays in the heel perfectly, it doesn't fucking waver from the position that it's in. And that position is with its tail tucked all the way under its ass. Its ears are back and it's flat and it's walking along next to me, but it looks at me the entire time with its ears back, tail tucked under its ass, no prance in its step. I definitely ain't getting fucking full points, am I? Right? No. Like, you're going to say, hey,
there's something wrong here.
Yeah, this looks like shit. Yeah. Like, I'm docking you a ton of points.
And they do that in IGP. Like, your dog's supposed to show expression in those drives, not be.
Yeah, but so like in IGP, it's even more extreme.
It is more extreme.
It's they can, just because of the attitude of the dog, drop you a band, like 10 points.
Yep.
Like, and not even just take them from your healing. So like in PSA, you would lose those points from your healing because that's where it was. In IGP, they can just take 10 points. They can just go, because of the expression of your dog. I don't like that.
Yeah.
IGP, I'm pretty sure that's correct. I'm not an IGP expert.
To be honest, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, but that's what I'm saying. We have that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and that's how we advocate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's how we say, I don't like the way that you've trained this dog.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got the dog to walk by your side, but the mannerism and how the dog is carrying itself, it's very expressive and you can tell exactly what's happened.
So we're not doing that because it's not in line with success. And also it's not good for the dog. But even if I didn't care about the dog, it wouldn't make me more successful treating a dog that way. But I think the interesting one of freedom from fear and distress is that's what often gets used on us as balanced trainers, saying, oh, you're training the dog with fear. But I think as well, the other side of that coin is we go, yeah, but the dog is in behavior mod and stuff like that. We go, yeah, the dog's feeling a ton of fear and distress. And I know how to fix that. I know how to fix that fast.
Exactly.
Right. And so you know how to fix that slow. I know how to fix that fast. So which one of us is staying stronger to this fifth point here of the freedom from fear and distress? The dog is in fear and distress. I can get him out of that in a week, and you can get him out of that in 6 months, maybe, if the people do exactly as you say when you say. Which one of us is being more cruel to the dog? I would argue you.
Well, mate, then you could almost say that every vet on the planet is now under scrutiny, because when they're telling people not to socialise their dog until they're 16 weeks of age, which is
you're creating a bunch of fear and distress.
You're creating a bunch of fear and distress.
A circumstance where that can manifest. Is
exactly.
Probably a better thing to say.
That's more likely. Everything needs to be in contrast. Like, there was a very vogue discussion about people having fear-free environments. I wouldn't even send a dog to a fear-free environment because I don't buy into that at all. What I would say to them is reduce fear. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The capacity minimal fear to reduce fear. Because again, when you listen to Melanie Uter and neurologists talking about how the brain accepts the balance of life, like it tries to zero itself out. Some fear is beneficial as a survival mechanism. Imagine if you didn't fear anything.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had no fear, imagine how many people would die.
Well, it's extremely maladaptive. That's what we look at. We have examples of that. So, in certain bloodlines of particular breeds of dogs that don't have the capacity to feel fear. That's what gameness essentially is, of a kind.
Yep.
And
they'll run off a cliff.
They fucking kill themselves. Like, my dog out there, like, I wouldn't say that he has no capacity to feel fear. I'd say that it was very reduced capacity to feel fear. He's very strong-nerved in a sort of annoying way. He doesn't really worry about many things. And as a result,
they injure themselves.
He has no self-preservation. He would kill himself 10 times a day. Not so much now because he's an old man, but when he was younger, it was a hard work to keep that dog alive because he was constantly doing crazy shit. So 5 freedoms: freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. in general, I think that's a fucking great list of things
Of
and an
course.
excellent guideline for us as dog trainers with some nuance and understanding behind it.
Without being an extremist.
Yeah.
Without looking at it from the curvature of either end of extremities. If you look at it from a middle place, like a 0 point, that sounds reasonable to me. Like I advocate for many of that.
Yeah.
With
all of it with a couple of like.
All of it, yes.
Yeah, except.
Yeah.
Right? Like the reality of the situation is dogs get hungry. Like I can't avoid a dog getting hungry. My dog in the morning is like, hey man, it's time to feed me.
Again, when I refer back to the comments that people make in social media, now I get it why some people are so stupidly aggressive in their viewpoints. They have no idea, but they feel like it's their right to contribute with just verbal diarrhea.
Yeah.
I'm surprised when I do take the time to read through banter that people have put in line. It's outrageous what they're saying. Like they're so out of their field, yet they feel like, oh, it's my right to say something. It's my right to challenge you as an expert on your point of view.
Yeah.
Even though I have absolutely zero skin in the game. Some of them probably don't even have an animal. They're in the toilet in the morning, taking their morning dump, and they're fucking scrolling through and they go,
Throw some fuel on this fire.
yeah, let's light a fire and just leave this. And to be honest, sometimes these people are so amoral that they don't even think about it. They're just on to their next victim.
Yeah.
And they leave you smoldering on it going, hey, read this fucking dumpster fire by this nightmare.
Something I've noticed on social media lately, especially in the last 12 months, is that I'm intentionally trying to be as compassionate as I can with a lot of people and not engaging, but also sort of choosing not to allocate too much value to the things that they're saying. Because I think a lot of people are fed up with the things that are outside of their control.
And they feel
are
so
therefore-
powerless.
Yeah, and they therefore are flexing hard where they can exert any level of control.
Yeah, that's a good
or
point.
where their voice can be heard. Because not that many people are really aware of the turmoil that the world is in. Like I've kind of noticed that. I try and avoid it.
How could you not be aware?
Well, if you're not paying attention, if you've chosen to turn off, right, you're not aware that we're on the brink of nuclear war on many fronts, not just like one. And I think people are aware of that and know that there's nothing they can do about it. People are pissed off with things that are happening with their politicians. People are pissed off about the things that have happened in the past with COVID and stuff like that. And there's nothing you can do about any of that shit, right? We're all fucking sitting here, like, short of rioting in the streets and overthrowing governments, which is largely off the table. So people feel completely powerless, helpless, and they're exerting as much influence and control in the places that they can when they can. And that's why I'm sort of staying out of a lot of social media stuff, because I'm like, hey, that's a fucking stupid and crazy thing to say, but I get how you feel. I could imagine a version of me saying a bunch of stupid shit because I feel so fucking angry about other things that I'm going to make a big deal out of this thing that isn't a big deal. I can see how you do that. So I'm not throwing fuel on that fire. I'm not engaging with you because I'm not going to perpetuate this nonsense, but I'm not going to make it any worse for you either.
I don't want to go too far down that COVID rabbit hole because it is such a controversial topic, and I've already put my stance on an earlier episode. However, for a lot of people, that really highlighted how out of control things are and how limited in control they were. In Australia, one of the ways that they usually try and suppress you is they say that is so un-Australian. You know, they try and shame you into saying, you know, like, what is an Australian? Australian is a dignified culture of people that do the right thing and have this buddy network of each other and look out for each other. And yet when you get such a fucking scumbag rogue politician that just buries you in a monumental pile of shit, I have a mistrust for politicians in general because I just see so many of the lies they do.
Yeah.
You know, like I wait in hope for them to do the right thing by the constituent. But I also feel like there's so many of them that are being given such levels of power that they still look at us like we're battery hens, and they still look at us like we're in a position where they can just say, oh, these fucking jonos will just do what they're told. They'll just fall into line. They'll never get rid of us. And that's how the situation was designed. And this is what pisses me off when we get into animal rights. We're letting some crazy people dictate some of the terms of how we keep our animals, even when we're good people and we do the right thing. I fear in my lifetime that I will see such exaggerated powers given to some of these people that it will be very difficult to own some of the dogs that we wanted to keep or should have had a right to keep because we were doing the right thing by them.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some dog training next time.
The only reason I want to do this is because
it's necessary. We know.
Remarkably, this is one of those episodes where we got a lot more discourse than most others. Like we put out episodes and our people say, hey, great episode. Thanks, man. And we'll get one or two people who will do an Instagram tag and stuff like that. This one got a lot.
Yeah.
Most of this week,
struck a chord.
I feel that people are feeling the pains of it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a revolutionary leader in any of this sort of stuff. The only suggestions that I'm giving to people is, like me, you're capable of doing your research. Like me, you're capable of going online and watching the same YouTube clips that I watched during the week that pissed me off, or finding some of those little excerpts that I saw and looking on ChatGPT to ask me to find the sources and stuff like that. You can do all this yourself.
Yeah.
Like you have the capability to, if it's upsetting you and you feel that it's not right and it's incorrect and some of these people should be held to a higher standard or held to account over some of the things that they're saying or the direction that they're trying to drive our industry in, yeah, of course, do something about it.
Yeah.
Like my time is finite. There's times where I want to pass the mantle to other people and say, do something about this, man. Otherwise, you'll get swept out into deep water, and that's where they want to take you because they're experienced at that. That's where they like to drown you.
That's right. All right, that's it. Another episode, Canine Paradigm.
Done.
As always, if you like what you hear, like, rate, share, subscribe. Do that through whatever subscription service you download us from. Then just go to another one, do it there. They don't check. You can do it anywhere you want.
You say that all the time.
I know.
Is it true?
I have no idea. I made it up. I mean, how the fuck would they check?
I don't know. Digital residue.
Yeah, AI will get you.
Yeah.
Deep sequel.
They can. Yeah, they can check now. AI.
You imagine FBI turns up to the house. Hey, did you leave a review on something you didn't actually fucking listen to? I did, but I listened on another platform. I swear to God, I do like it. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is jump into Patreon. A few bucks a month gets you a giant backlog of info. I finally put that box thing in there. It's my final say on the box. Hour and 40 minutes of me fucking talking about the box.
Wonderful.
Theo edited it for me. I was bored out of my brain watching myself as I watched it back. I've watched it that many times. We put all these graphics in it. I feel pretty good about it.
I haven't watched it yet,
it's the final thing.
I will.
It's just me talking for an hour and a half. But if you're interested in box stuff, that's my final say on it.
Did you do the dimensions?
I put it on the thumbnail, said the dimensions don't matter.
That's what people were saying. You've ruined my fun.
And
now I get it.
I specifically explained how the dimensions don't matter. And
that doesn't matter. You know that, don't you?
No, but what I know is that, and I explained that it doesn't need to be a box and talked about how it can be a bucket and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't need to be anything. You can do it with your keys on the floor. The principles remain the same. Explained all that, but at the end. So that when people go, oh, I don't have the box, I'm like, yeah, you didn't watch it all. I don't fuck off. Right. So
yeah, but that fuels their wank bank.
Yeah, well, they can complain somewhere else.
Yep.
Anyway, jump in the Patreon. You can learn all about the box. Costs you $3 to see that.
Yep.
There's a bunch of cool stuff in Patreon. One thing that I do is release all my courses into Patreon first at a discounted price in there. So you can jump into there, and it's a significant discount. Like I'm talking like hundreds of dollars less.
Yeah, that's great.
So jump into Patreon if you're interested in any of my courses.
So they get to beta test it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's how we run it.
Yeah, that's great.
Me and Jazz released the puppy course during the week. We put it into Patreon. Those guys find, like, hey, the login doesn't work if I go through this way. And I'm like, yep, cool, thank you for info. And we change it. And then by the time it goes to the public next week, we'll have worked out the kinks.
I love getting little sneak previews. I used to beta test some games and shit like that back in the day. Mm-hmm. Not get paid for it, but I'd get early previews of games, and I'd, like all you had to do was just say it's buggy here.
Yeah, this bit doesn't work.
Yeah,
fix this.
So it was just like you might get massive discounts or early release or something like that, but yeah, they'd send it to you early before everyone else got it, and because I was impatient, I got to do all those sort of things. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. So if you're interested in my Wave Tops course or the Raising a High Drive Puppy course, you can check those out. They're on my website. But also if you're a Patreon, make sure you buy it through the link in Patreon.
Yeah, nice.
Another way you could support the show is to get some cool merch. There's links in the show notes to Spring where you can get some t-shirts or a wall tapestry. And if you want to get in contact with us, the best way to do that is to, first of all, jump into our Facebook discussion groups. A lot of cool information goes in there. It's where we sort of keep a finger on the pulse of what people are up to, and people tag us and tell us things and show us what's going on, see what madness is happening online. But if you want to get in touch with us directly, you can shoot us an email. We are info@thecanineparadigm.com. I hope your dog lives forever. Goodbye.